In case you don't know, I'm called Peter Usborne, and I'm kind of the host of this thing. Sometimes I do pinch myself and say, you're 75, what the hell are you doing being a children's book publisher? Why aren't you an astronaut or a pop star or something serious? And you know what? Last Thursday, I was invited to a primary school in Wootton Bassett, where the corpses arrive. It's now called Royal Wootton Bassett. And I'd been awarded as a prize by some draw, and I had an hour with a primary school, the whole of a primary school, and it was pure bloody magic. It was practically a religious experience. Now I know why the hell I am a children's book publisher. We talk to those 6 to 11-year-olds terribly successfully. Maybe it's something to do with me. It was just an amazing experience. I just needed to share that with you because it's brought me back to being very pleased to be a children's book publisher because it was not something I ever thought of doing. Okay, what I'm doing tonight is I'm not going to keep you here for more than about 15, 20 minutes max. And those of you who saw roughly page 117B of the Sunday Times colour section, or whatever it was, may as well leave now, because it's going to be slightly similar. It's the story of what I've done and what Usborne Publishing has done. It's been an extraordinary story, and those of you who don't know it will be quite surprised by some of the things that have gone into my little life. Okay, let's go. I grew up... Oh, I should say, I warn you, my staff have decided that this speech should be occasionally interrupted by sound effects, God help us. That means, unfortunately, it always makes me feel ashamed, I have to read for some notes because they're keywords I have to say, which may or may not spark sound effects. The first one is, I grew up during the war, and like every boy, I was inculcated by the media and generality around us to love Spitfires. It worked. And like so many boys in the Second World War, all I wanted to do was fly Spitfires. I am, in fact, booked on the 25th of June to fly a Spitfire, believe it or not. I might make it. If the rain stops me, I won't. But all I wanted to do was to be a Spitfire pilot, like almost everybody, and I kind of half realized that dream by making model aeroplanes. And I think it's probably the sniffing of the glue that, quite honestly, I like best. But I used to go and buy my bits, it was little balls of cement models, from a shop at the end of Weybridge called Mr. Rogers' Model Shop. And on the counter of Mr. Rogers' model shop was a little plaque which said, "My hobby is my work, and my work is my hobby." And I thought, great idea! And in fact, I think I have achieved exactly that my hobby is my work, and my work is my hobby, and I'm incredibly moved and proud to be able to say that. So thank you, Mr. Rogers. So we have a few ambitions at Usborne Publishing. The most important one is to make people spelled Osborne feel like a seriously persecuted minority. And perhaps more realistic, actually, all we're trying to do is be the perfect jewel in the publishing crown. All we need to be is absolutely the best. The story of how we got to be where we are starts about 50 years ago when I was at Oxford, and I started a so-called funny magazine that wasn't at all funny, but became funny because people like Richard Ingrams and John Wells and Willie Rushton, who were around, joined my staff, and suddenly Mesopotamia, as it was called, was a bit of a hit at Oxford, and we finally decided that after Oxford we would turn it into something for the real world, and we turned it into Private Eye. And I wasn't the first editor of Private Eye, but I was the man who appointed the editor, who bought the company off the shelf, who found the offices and got it all going. So I'm a kind of founder of Private Eye, and it was a pretty painful experience, quite honestly. And one of my dreads is that if I die and I ever get an obituary, it'll say Private Eye Man dies. I am still a shareholder of Private Eye. I still get no less than £8,000 a year in dividends. You wouldn't believe that. Quite serious stuff from Private Eye. And I'm still very proud to have been associated with it. But I only worked there for 3 years as the business manager. And I finally left, I remember, because I was suddenly, it was on Friday evening, and I was working quite late, and I suddenly realized what I was doing. I was checking the small ads for suspected homosexual overtones. In those days, homosexuality was illegal, and there was these sneaky homosexuals who advertised via motorbike ads for kinky leather gear. And I thought at 8:30 on Friday night, what the bloody hell am I doing, sitting in Soho, checking for suppressed homosexual advertisements? So I left and went to a French business school, and in the end, I ended up in the BBC Publishing Group as the chairman's assistant. He didn't know what to do with me. You know, he'd started Private Eye, he'd been to business school, reasonably bright, give him a job, and I sat around for a couple of years not doing anything, really, in the next door room to the boss. And then, one Friday afternoon again, at conveniently about 3:30, my wife rang up. Peter, this was after 3 or 4 years of marriage, you're going to be a father. Wow! So I went straight through the door to my boss and said, I don't want to do anything more with you. I want to do something with children. He said, okay, go down a couple of floors, get yourself a job in the education department. I did. I invented some children's books called McDonald's Starters that were extremely successful, got promoted and promoted and promoted. And then one day, I was in the loo. And so was my boss. And as we washed our hands, my boss said, Peter, how's things going, in the way that bosses do? And I said, oh, it seems to be going pretty well. And he said, I've been hearing good things about you. What do you want to do next? And I sort of rubbed my hands and said, I hate to say this, but I don't want to be promoted. I'd really like to start my own company. And he said, all right, I'll give you the money. And he did. 200 grand. £1 million in today's money. And suddenly, I had £1 million, and I didn't know what the hell to do. But I took my best editor, Angela, and we got a little room in a place called Covent Garden, which was then famous as a slum, which is a vegetable market, and we took an office in 20 Garrick Street, and we didn't know what on earth we were doing. Me and Angela sat there smoking ourselves to death. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to start a magazine. We've got so much money. We're going to start a school. We can't do what we've done before, which is children's educational books. And suddenly we realized that actually you had to do what you were known for. And so we did decide to do children's information books, which is what I'd made my name as in this educational publishing before that had backed me, except that instead of doing it for schools, we were going to do it for homes. How are we going to do that? And we came up with know-how books. There is the know-how book of Spycraft, still my favorite ever Usborne book. It was a revolution. In those days, we're talking 1975. We started the company in 1973, that's why we're here. 1975, we produced the know-how books. And these were deliberately intended to ape television, magazines, and comics with hand lettering, television-type screens, and a floppy sort of magazine-y feeling, because I thought at that time that children, frankly, enjoyed those media a lot more than they did books. I think that's changed, but that was the time when children's books tended to be either prize-winning, Czechoslovak, and you didn't know which way up they were printed, or absolute crap, known as print fodder, dot-to-dot books that nobody bothered to edit at all. And we wanted to be in the middle. So we developed a know-how book of various other things, but Spycraft is my favorite. And the reason why everybody, or half the people, or a quarter of the people here, are wearing black hats and moustaches is because the character that run through this book is called Black Hat Spy. So you are surrounded now by imitation black hat spy men. Oh, okay, so on we go. The know-how books become extremely successful. We do lots of other books in the same format, using the floppy, whatever it is, and suddenly, during the 80s, Usborne Publishing is a bit of a phenomenon, does extremely well, and has a very high profile. And then I meet a man called Peter Kindersley in the road, and he says, I'm starting some children's books. Would you like to sell them in your party plan operation? And I said, no, I would not. But I had got competition, known as Eyewitness. And so suddenly we had people doing exactly the same idea as we were doing, non-fiction titles, so everything you could think of. Only instead of using humour and paperback, they were using hardbacks. And I have to say, they were very successful. So we were driven, of course, to react. And we did various, I can only mention a few of the very large number of diversifications that we were forced into. There was the rather famous First 1,000 Words book, which has sold, God knows, 30, 40 million. There was the, I now think, ghastly little yellow duck, which I'm deeply ashamed of, but which appears in 1,000 Usborne books from those, the 90s, the 80s and the 90s. We did the world's first ever books about home computing for children. We were the first people to do internet-linked reference books. We did a very famous series called Farmyard Tales, still around after God knows how many years. We did flap books, sticker books, and we started a home selling operation known as Usborne Books at Home, which has done very well, and which has helped to make us a household name. And I'm very proud of what we've done. So, what I'm really thrilled about at the moment is that we, unlike the people in Brussels, have made the European Union work. We have an Usborne European Union. I talk a lot of languages. My mother was a foreigner. My first wife was a foreigner. And we now have Édition Usborne in Paris. Thank you 4 people from Paris who've come over. I'm absolutely thrilled. We're distributed by Interforum. And we were recently, my wife and I, invited to a Michelin, or is it 2 Michelin-starred dinner in Bordeaux by Monsieur Mollard of Librairie Mollard, which is the biggest independent bookshop in France. And we are, after 25 years, now a pretty serious player in the French market. And we're growing like mad. The fastest growing is Italy, Edizioni in Milan, which is doing absurdly well, grew at 60% last year. We've just had a talk to the Dutch people the Belgians, who are over here as well. Thank you for coming. And they're doing extremely well. Ediciones Usborne in Madrid and in Barcelona, which does Latin America. And they're here too, 4 of them, is doing phenomenally well. Brazil is the most incredible place. In case you didn't know, there's a thing called Edições Usborne, I think, in Sao Paulo. Brazil is, of course, the country that's going to have the next, whatever it is, World Cup and the next Olympics, and is an extraordinary phenomenon. Though it's not, I think this year hasn't been quite such a growth, but it has had amazing growth. And it has prices double the level of UK. And we keep ringing out saying, are you sure the Usborne book shouldn't be priced downwards a bit? We're a bit worried about charging £5 for a 16-page pamphlet. No, if anything, put them up, they answer. It's extraordinary. Brazil is, and the streets are literally, seen from London, the Brazilian streets are paved with gold. And the last one, but perhaps the most significant, and I'm most proud of, because my ma and my wife were German, is Usborne Verlag, which we started a couple of years, or a year and a half ago, I think, in Munich, and which is really beginning to do very well. It's new, it's only been on the market for a year and a half, but we get constant reports that the Germans really like our books. This is something that no other publisher has even tried to do, let alone pulled off this European Union thing. And I can tell you, bookshops in Europe are very different from bookshops in the UK. They have, most of them, maintained retail price maintenance, which has not happened in the UK, I think, to an absolutely tragic result, which is that the small bookshops in the UK are under terrible pressure from the big guys. But in Europe, in France, you have the loi Langue, and in Germany, you have the same thing. This is under some pressure from Brussels, which is trying to abolish this. They're saying it's not economic and everything. They're wrong. You have an extraordinary book trade, which is like the British book trade used to be 15 or 20 years ago. Lots of independent bookshops. So that is our real excitement at the moment, is we are publishing in 7 languages, not 1. There are 7 Usborne Publishings, of which I can well see France, possibly Italy, certainly Germany, in 3 or 4 years' time, catching up with the UK. I mean, it's astounding. It's an incredible privilege. I talk lots of languages, so it's an absolute thrill for me that we have a European Union of our own. Plus, of course, we don't always publish ourselves in foreign languages. We sell translation rights to other people, and we have reached, I'm sure, the world-breaking number of 103 languages to be translated into. And I once went along and heard Scholastic boasting that they'd been translated in 55 languages, and I thought, ha, 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 ha. We're in 103. But of all the phenomenon that is really interesting, the really interesting one is that the whole world, as I'm sure you all know, is learning English, which has created a completely new market for children's books in English everywhere. And that is new and amazingly exciting. We don't really know how to cope with it, but I can tell you, for anybody who's interested in export and languages and countries like I am, it is an incredibly exciting phenomenon. You can sell bundles of books in English in France, Germany, Abu Dhabi, China, Taiwan. It's amazing. I mean, it's just getting going. But I'm sure all of you know there are about 6 times as many people in China learning English as there are in the UK who speak it. It's an absolutely incredible and amazing phenomenon. You've got somewhere like Norway. They talk English better than you do. It's not just English, it's amazing English. So I think this is a fantastic job for someone who loves flying, who, wants to fly I'm a pilot. I have an airplane, and I love getting on airliners, and I love the whole atmosphere in an airport of these incredible names being called out and these incredible destinations being up on notice boards and everything. So it couldn't really be a better job, this export languages thing, for a chap like me who loves languages and who loves flying, and it's just great. And I'm very grateful for all the people here who've helped me actually have this incredible life. So what about the future? Briefly, I'm getting to the end of this now. Merely better and better and better books. And more markets. I see Usborne as an island of brilliant production in a vast, expanding ocean of markets. It is an extraordinary feeling to be who I am. You can see it. You can see it's almost like the Silver Sea. You can see these markets coming up all over the place. I can't hear enough about the export markets. We are doing new media, but only when we know how to sell them. Lots of people have rushed into doing media, not quite sure how to sell them, apps and things. We have Sticker Dolly apps because we have Sticker Dolly books. So we can advertise Sticker Dolly apps in our Sticker Dolly books. And believe it or not, we have made significant profits on both our Sticker Dolly apps. And I bet that's not common around publishing. And we've done a fabulous free online game through the Usborne Foundation, which is my personally financed charity, called Teach Your Monster to Read. And if those of you have got any 6- or 5-year-old relatives who are just getting into learning, particularly phonics, go online, and for nothing, you can download the most fabulous and very expensive and elaborate animated game called Teach Your Monster to Read. My plan is that I will never die, and I will never retire. But in case I do, I have 2 absolutely brilliant children standing by. My daughter is already working in the company whenever she's got time, and actually launched us, or got us going in Germany, and of course talks German, because her mum was German. I merely want to be the best in the world for staff, readers, customers, and I want to be the worst in the world for our competitors, who I loathe. As far as I'm concerned, the future of Usborne Publishing is absolutely golden. This European thing I've got going is motoring in an amazing way. And all the Europeans who incidentally have come here, and to all of whom I have talked, I think in their own languages, not Dutch, sorry. I said I talked English to them. Thank you for coming, because it's a hugely important thing to me. So could I propose a toast? Somebody's going to give me a glass. Can I propose a toast to all of you who've helped Usborne Publishing get this amazing distance in life? Thank you.